Buenas tardes. We are here in I think this might be the last session of concurrent sessions. From here we go to a plenary to report back our findings. I wonder if, ya para que, somos pocos. My name is Efraín Agosto. I'm on the faculty at New York Theological Seminary, across the way in the west side. And I'm also a lay member of the United Church of Christ. Although I work in New York, I live in Hartford, but I grew up here in the city in Brooklyn. And this is the session where we discuss action items. We've been listening to a presentation, particularly yesterday, about the situation in Puerto Rico, the crisis situation there, economically, politically, health, in terms of health issues, the presence of the Promesa board, establishing certain parameters for resolving the debt crisis, and the pluses and minuses, almost literally, of that situation. So yesterday was a day of understanding and learning about the situation. Please come in, make yourself at home. We're a small group, so join us here so we can engage. And different groups have been discussing today, in particular, what are we going to do? Right? I just came from the last session, the cultural engagement session, and there was a lot of energy around practical, concrete, actionable items that we can do, strategies and actions that we can take from the various sectors of the Puerto Rican community. And this is the sector or the community that deals with faith communities. I will introduce my colleagues in a minute, but we are interested in our sacred traditions, our faith communities, our churches, our congregations, and mosque. If there are any Muslims in the room, there are Latino Muslims all over the country now, as we know. So the conversation needs to include a mosque as well. So we're concerned that religion, faith communities, given our commitments that our sacred traditions, our sacred texts call us to, around justice, around social concerns, that we too have a voice on behalf of Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans, and that we're not quiet. And so this is the kinds of conversation we want to have today. Our colleagues will come from different religious traditions themselves, and they will share what their congregations or their denominations or their organizations are doing currently from their experience or their own sense of conviction to what needs to be done and then we'll open it up. So each of them present 5 minutes or so, and then we'll open up a conversation. We're a small group. You all have your own religious convictions, represent your own faith communities, or you're concerned that what does my faith say about what's going on? You know, since we're such a religious people, the Puerto Rican people, from various traditions. So we want to have a good conversation, and I have to report back to the plenary, and you all need to help me look good with some good ideas that we can present. I mean, I have some myself, but I want to speak for all of us as we go back in plenary session after this time. So, without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. Immediately to my left, Roberto Lugo is a director of the Intervention and Program Development for the Asociación for Puerto Ricanos en Marcha in the great city of Philadelphia. He's also a clergyman with an independent Protestant congregation there in Philadelphia. So we welcome Roberto Luis Lugo. Immediately to his left is the Reverend Dr. Damaris Whittaker de Leon, who is Senior Minister of the historic Centro Church in Hartford, Connecticut, First Church of Christ, United Church of Christ. if I may steal some of her thunder, she is, in case she doesn't say this, she is the first woman, first person of color, first woman, and first Latina to be senior minister of the oldest congregation in the city of Hartford, Connecticut. So we're very pleased that she could join us today to see what she has to share from that perspective as a Latina Puerto Rican leading a mostly Anglo congregation in the historic city of Hartford. Full disclosure, the reasons I know some of that is because I am a lay member of her congregation. And thirdly, we have the Reverend Cruz, who's the pastor of St. John Chrysostom Church in the Bronx and the regional coordinator of Catholic Charities for the borough of the Bronx. And we're very pleased to have Reverend Cruz as well with us. So, just so you know, we have two Protestants, one male, one female, one Roman Catholic, and in the person of Reverend Cruz. So a variety of traditions represented here. I'm born and raised a Latino Pentecostal for Brooklyn, so you got that little Pentecostal perspective there as well, although I'm currently with the United Church of Christ. Without further ado, Reverend Lugo, and then Reverend Whittaker, and then Reverend Cruz.
Buenas tardes a todos. Thank you to be here. This is an interesting worship we're going to have here this afternoon. I hope that you have enjoyed the previous workshops. Have been a great time hearing from different perspectives, different ideas, different people, that how worried they are about the situation in Puerto Rico, and especially the situation of the diaspora here. We should be doing what we should be doing. I'm from Philadelphia, originally from Puerto Rico, born and raised in PR, and eventually grew up in New York from 17 years old to until I get married, and then moved to Philadelphia for a free tuition I have to finish my master's degree there. As a human beings born in Puerto Rico, for me, it's very important to be part of what happened in my country or my people. That's my first calling above anything. I born with that. I don't ask for it. Lord decide that I'm born in PR. Well, that doesn't mean responsibility, being a clergy or not. That being said, I just started my political involvement when I was 13 years old in Puerto Rico, and since then, I still. When I became a minister, there was a great a dilemma about political movement and faith, which I find not too much true, because the Bible itself always go for justice issues in different historical situations. And I see Puerto Rico in that perspective for the faith, that we as ministers and people of faith or Christians should be very actively involved in the Puerto Rican situation from the justice perspective, especially because our country is in a very human right situation. Rights have been denied, rights have been taken away, and our people is paying for something that they didn't create it. But here we are. Then everybody asks me what the church can do, what the church should do, what the church is doing. And that's an interesting question, because historically the church mostly have been quiet in the situation of, especially Puerto Rico. If you go to Puerto Rico, my brother Roberto can testify that the church is very quiet about what's going on in PR, even though this is a stance of justice, not a political stand itself. It's amazed me, it surprised me that I don't find more ministers standing up and speak up about what's going on in Puerto Rico. But when it comes to Philadelphia, my own town, I find practically the same kind of a perspective, situation. We have maybe more than 200 churches in Philadelphia, Protestant, Pentecostal, every denomination, and most of them have been quiet about what's going on in Puerto Rico, And when we try to approach them and engage them in the situation in Puerto Rico, you feel the resistance of these clergy brothers and sisters that they're not getting involved or say nothing about it because they tend to mix the justice issue with political issue. Okay? Yes, if you fight for justice, you're going to be involved in politics. But a good politics, no partisan politics. Personally, I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican, I'm a Christian with a justice perspective. Okay? And when you see something going wrong and you not speak up, you are as guilty as those who do nothing. Okay? The situation is bad. People who make the situation bad are guilty, but those who keep quiet, knowing that it's bad, are guilty as well. Okay? And then in Philadelphia, we're trying to put people together in this effort in different occasions. Like last year, we did a big event in Philadelphia, especially the July 25th, celebrating the day of the Constitution or the day of the invasion in Puerto Rico. Just remembering what's going on. And the response from the clergy was interesting. Only a few churches, a few ministers show up there. Okay? And the question is this. We as a minister, especially for my city, are always standing for justice, and that people tend to label you because you are doing something that you believe in. And they tend to say, el pastor Lugo es un comunista. El pastor Lugo es muy liberal. Okay? Y esto otro. And then that's the window that the church open when they're going to say something outside they don't want to deal with. And even though like that, I don't care. That you can call me whatever you want. That's people's problem, not my problem. Okay? If being a communist is standing for a justice cause, then I'm a communist then. Nothing wrong with that. Okay? If being a Christian means that you don't get involved in the issue that people need to be involved, then I don't want to be part of that either. See? That's my stand right there. What we can do, well, the thing is in the churches where most of the people are. Okay? You think about 200 churches in Philadelphia, and then that could be easily there over 15,000, 20,000 people right there in those churches, okay, that they go regularly. But even with that, we don't see the effect of that faith within the community situation. We have a great faith. We have great hopes. We have a great God. But people keep that hope and God for themselves. They don't put that in action. They don't put that in perspective of their faith. They don't see God give you a city if for you to take over. If God give you a land for you to take over. No way for God come down and here. Okay? And I believe that the church have a great opportunity here, a great moment, even a historical moment, where it can stand up, speak up, and present the kingdom agenda for the case of Puerto Rico. And that kingdom agenda, honestly, is not far away for those who are working right now from their perspective. Okay? I hear my brother from the political view, from the economic view, and you hear them, and they follow an agenda they didn't even know is a kingdom agenda. Okay? And whatever is worth for the benefit of the community, for the well-being of the community, that's kingdom agenda. Okay? If we talking about a situation in Puerto Rico that is in a deep crisis, Puerto Rico is in a big bankruptcy, Puerto Rico have no chance to pay this debt. Okay? And you understand the injustice situation there, and you as a minister or as a Christian stand quiet, you have to be a very irresponsible person. I don't question the faith, but that's faith for action. Okay? If you look back in your own faith history, you see how God liberated the Hebrew from Egypt. Okay? It's a great comparison we can use today from Puerto Rico. And I mean, again, this is not a political ideology movement. It's a justice movement for the right that our people, Puerto Ricans, deserve. Okay? We are in a great danger of being permanently affected by this situation. I believe that the church have the pulpit, have the people to educate them, to teach them about who they are. For example, I'm Christian, but I'm also Puerto Rican. before becoming a Christian, I was Puerto Rican. I had a history. I have perspective as a Puerto Rican. When it comes to the faith, the faith doesn't erase that. On the contrary, the faith affirms that. And that's what I see in my colleagues, in ministers, that they don't take the opportunity of enrich that people bring with them. And empower that, what they bring with the faith, and stand up and speak up and fight for justice. I believe that the church is that channel that can change the pattern that's going on here in the diaspora and even in Puerto Rico. It's so difficult to. I was talking to my brother Roberto aquí. ¿Qué pasa con la iglesia en Puerto Rico? Oh my gosh. Y me dice, Reverendo, no comment. It's difficult. Okay.
I'm going to have to ask you to
Yeah. Thank
stop
you.
right there. You've laid before us the challenge that clergy and other religious leaders have in convincing people of faith in certain sectors to stand up and act for Puerto Rico, and we thank you for that. And we'll circle back to other items you want to add. But let's listen to our second speaker, Reverend Damaris Whittaker.
So thank you for having me. This is my second year participating in this event. Last year we were in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and it was great to be there, and I was honored that I was asked to speak. And I still live in Connecticut. I'm in Hartford, and we have a huge influx of Puerto Ricans in the city of Hartford, and I feel like I have to speak on 2 points, and one of them is, what can we do, and what should we be doing, and what have we done? Mm-hmm. And I think that the church's biggest mistake has been that it has isolated themselves from everybody else. They think that we live in silos, and this theology of separation is one that I'm a progressive Christian, so I come from a different stance of theology. So this separation theology that we have embraced of estamos separados para ser santificados, listen, hear me when I say to you, that is the biggest mistake we have made as people, because we cannot do this alone. We need to come together ecumenically and in a matter of in ways of interfaith as well, and to be in nuestras iglesitas escondidos and all of that, it is not what we have been called to do. So there's very few things in the world that frustrate me more than this sort of isolation that we have placed ourselves as people of faith. It's frustrating, it's counterproductive, it is destructive to young people. It doesn't lead us forward in a way where we can unify or be productive to advocate for the rights of Puerto Ricans in the United States. And so it would serve us well to really look at each other regardless of the color of our skin, our faith, our background, as partners in community. And so to that point, just a very quick story. In Hartford, we have a library in a neighborhood called the Frog Hollow neighborhood. And the Frog Hollow neighborhood has historically been a Latino, Hispanic neighborhood where Latinos come from the island or various countries in Latin America, and they sort of settled in the Frog Hollow neighborhood. I always say that one neighborhood in New York is like Hartford, Connecticut, right? So we're like this big town and then we proclaim to be this city, where we really are a big town. So Frog Hollow has been, when you enter Frog Hollow through Park Street all the way up, el mercado and las panaderías and all this stuff is there. You know that you've entered a place where Latinos live. And so there's a library there that for many, many years have been advocating to the city of Hartford for a better space, because it's a branch. It's not the main library in the city of Hartford. The main library is located on Main Street. But yet, as a branch, it's the highest functioning branch, receiving the most participants, and it is the one that has less resources, and it has been like this for many, many years. And so in the process of advocating for this new space and making sure that the monies were that were sort of separated, for lack of a better word, for the project, they had great difficulty, and many advocates in the community were involved, but no people of faith. So I got involved, and I was able to work with the librarian and the community organizers, and be a voice to the mayor and others that this library was crucial, because now, in the last couple of years, with all of this, with the migration of Puerto Ricans back to the Frog Hollow neighborhood, we're seeing that a neighborhood that was changing to be a little bit more Central American and South American is returning very rapidly to be mostly Boricuas, mostly people from the islands. And so you have 2 or 3 staff receiving monthly over 1,000 kids with their families. You have around the table mothers who are trying to tutor their children who are taking classes in English, but their main language is Spanish, so they're not being able to really do that effectively. And so these are the realities that we don't know if we don't immerse ourselves in our neighborhoods as people of faith. And so to that, people, we have, I don't know how New York operates, but, in Connecticut, there's this affection for everything that is historic. And so, and I believe in historic restoration, but there's sometimes dos cantitos de brick pegados con un tape, and we're saying that's a historic monument that we cannot move. And that is ridiculous. And so there's this reasonable historic preservation, but then there is the one that makes no sense. And this is what we were dealing with the new location for this library. And so the Hartford Current puts up an article on somebody's opinion that it seemed to be coming from the whole neighborhood. And so we had to go and speak to the mayor and write to the mayor and say, just because someone says, this is not the best location, it doesn't mean that the whole neighborhood, and then we had to break down the realities of what's happening there. And so there are many ways where people of faith can collaborate. Okay, we then brought people from the suburbs of Hartford to the library. The church did, my church, so that people in Simsbury could see what was happening in Hartford, so that they could write and advocate to the mayor for the children of Hartford in the Frog Hollow neighborhood. So it doesn't mean that the church has to do this alone and on their own volition. Is that we recognize that everyone that is around us is our partners in justice and peace, and that we cannot do this by ourselves. That if we are going to create significant, sustainable change for the people of Puerto Rico that are moving to our neighborhoods, we cannot go at this alone. We have to see everybody as our partners. In our congregation, we support every faith. When the crisis of Syria became known, we had a Syrian dialogue, we had rallies, we stand with our Muslim neighbors, we do all of those things. So when I ask people from the interfaith community to support certain things, they show up. They show up. So we need to create partners in community as we receive more and more Puerto Ricans in our neighborhoods. And one last point is this. Sometimes our denominations, right, the big church in Cleveland or Chicago, our denominations do not fully understand the issue of Puerto Rico. For example, case in point, and this is my denomination, so I'm not offending anyone, when Promesa was passed, we get this awesome email, right? Like, good job, people, from the United Church of Christ, from the UCC, saying, finally, the people of Puerto Rico will not be, they will not be in debt because Promesa has passed. And the Boricuas in the denomination were like, who were talking to them, right? I mean, can someone ask us before they go and send a celebratory email? And so it is this disconnect also in nuestra propia casa, ¿verdad? In our own denominations of understanding, and so believe me, they got back some reactions, but it was premature. No one asked the people of Puerto Rico within the denomination, what's your position on this? They went and rallied over there from the top down, which is never a good model. And so then when it came out, we were all like, what was that? So we also have this responsibility that we have to educate, our own denominations, our own congregations, so that they can, we have to equip the leaders so that they can lead effectively as well. I am gonna, so I'll end this, ¿cómo se llama? ¿Cómo se dice eso? Este es el final del punto del discurso, is this. We cannot go at this alone. If the church is going to be effective and relevant in the world, it needs to know that we need each other.
Thank you, Reverend Whittaker. So we have an example of a congregation that stood with a community organization on behalf of programming that affected the Latino community as a whole, but in particular, emerging Puerto Rican presence. And we'll have a chance again to ask more about that experience in the second round of questions. And finally, Pastor Eric Cruz will share with us from his perspective in the Bronx.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. This is my first visit. I couldn't attend last year with Archbishop Gonzalez Nieves from Puerto Rico. I'm, as Efraín mentioned before, a pastor in the South Bronx, where I was raised in that same area. Born in Puerto Rico, but raised here in the Bronx. Studied elsewhere, Chicago area, Midwest, working with migrant farm workers for a couple of decades. I'm also director of Catholic Charities for the Bronx. It's a brand new position, only 2 or 3 years old now. And I thank my brother and sister here on the panel for their words. If I could throw or offer the other side of a coin, if you will. You've heard about the church, and I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. But we also have a challenge of generational disconnect between the Puerto Ricans here and the island, that they don't know their history. They don't know what's happened and the blessings or the gifts and the sacrifices that have been made for them. They're not savvy, they're not educated, as has been mentioned, but they haven't been educated from the beginning, before they get to school, perhaps. And some of our parents and grandparents, because of age, because of the time they were raised, have a disconnect. They've been perhaps, we could argue, too enculturated to the United States, and not enough in who they are and their identity as Puerto Rican, Christian, or whatever faith or not. And that's a tremendous challenge to resurrect and reactivate that culture. We have those wonderful groups in the downstairs in the fair, the tables, but how much more is there out there that we have not accessed or they have no relationship with? Our families, not to mention our faith communities. And the challenge of a faith community in the Bronx, in my little neck of the woods of the South Bronx, there are 22 church communities. In 5 years, it's changed. Most of the pastors of the Latinos who were there are no longer Puerto Rican. Colombian and good people. But a lot of times, you know how it goes. You go to where your country is. So your community may be Mexican and you're Colombian. There might be a depreciation of Guadalupe or the special feast day that are important to that religious cultural tradition. And that's a challenge, and I compliment you, I congratulate you. I remember when I had a parish that was mostly Vietnamese. I don't speak a word of Vietnamese. But I had to learn it. I had to learn African when I had an African community. There's a challenge from the faith perspective and how we educate and motivate the people who are around us. And I agree, New York has its layers of government with the mayor and the leadership. But thanks be to God, we've been able, at least in the Bronx, to bridge relationships with the local politicians. The best politics is the local politics. And those who were raised in the neighborhood are the greatest allies, generally speaking, of course. But it's that education that's lacking, historic, personal, family. Last year, we led a mission group to Puerto Rico, not me per se, Catholic Charities for the 10 counties. I forgot we delivered like 30,000 pounds of food and visited homes. And my challenge to my colleagues was the same challenge I made at St. Patrick's Cathedral. You know what? Everyone was so proud of yourselves.
Yeah.
What happened after that? The National Puerto Rican Day Parade, que bonita bandera. We'll talk about the crisis. Yes, we should do this. Well, when it was time to step up, you didn't. And maybe we need, and I know, I really truly believe, if we want to bridge the humanity, and I'll mention one other thing which might have upset people, but if we want to bridge this humanity, we need to form a mission trip and spend some time in Puerto Rico right now. Another 180 schools are closing.
Yes, right.
Another 200 doctors have left. If we have medical missions, and they should continue to other parts of the world, I think we need to have Puerto Rico to this for now. We need to take leaders of industry down there that we know. The energy issue is 12% of the problem in this budget, in this deficit. Over $12 billion of the whatever 73, whatever 84 now. And, and go down there. Let's offer the solar solution or an alternative to take that debt almost to zero. And create farms and hospitals and homes and other houses of worship that are solar powered. And educate and empower and employ those people there to work in these industries, giving them hope into a future, right? It used to be you leave Puerto Rico back when our grandparents would come here, mostly with the intent of going back. And I think they want to go back. I don't think that's been lost. But we have to give them a new future. We have to help educate them and empower them, and we have to really do the same here to be able to, and maybe take those young people, young adults, to Puerto Rico and let them feel for themselves their history and see it. Y animarlos, the Centro and other universities and colleges and other leaders, elected or otherwise, and start bringing them to the table, perhaps by industry and then eventually together, even to make a visit themselves to see, and then let the inspiration come as to what they can bring to this in new resources. I'm not even going to mention the elected officials and the advocacy, which is something we should also be involved in. You know, right now, I'm not going to get into state or commonwealth, but to empower our people, you have a voice and something to offer. Don't ever tell me what you can do. What can I do? We'll find something for you to do, and we'll find it in you. And you'll discover it yourself what you can do. And educate them via forums. And one other thing I'll just mention as a sidebar. We love New York, it's the Big Apple. Like, a few years ago, it would have been La Tarima, the podium, the stage for these discussions. It's important that we now engage cities where the diaspora is impacting. Florida, Connecticut. I used to live in Chicago 15 years, and I'm just returning from there today. And I see more and more Puerto Ricans and other Latino brothers and sisters moving to that part of the country. So what used to be concentrated here is now becoming a national issue. And I don't care what anyone in Washington or anywhere else has to say.
Yeah.
It's true. And we have to address it as such, and not just where we are in our neighborhoods or in our cities.
Thank you. So we've heard concrete examples of Catholic Charities, in this case, taking the educational job seriously, both for Puerto Ricans here, in terms of our historical understanding of our island, as well as how to be empowered on the island to get some of this work done. We've heard a concrete example toward that educational goal of mission trips of folk from here to the island to see for themselves on the ground what is going on. So thank you for that, Reverend Cruz. I'd like to do one question and circle back to our panelists, a question that I have for all three of them, and then open it up for dialogue. We have about 20-25 minutes to be together before we should break for the final plenary of the conference, which begins downstairs, or no, up here at 3:30. So we have a good time for dialogue, and I only have one question for colegas, for them to give brief answers. And basically it's a question around concreteness of their particular organizations. Reverend Lugo, you mentioned the July 25th event. Could you say one or two things about how that event or events like it in Philadelphia? Notice, by the way, that we have Philadelphia, Hartford, and the Bronx represented in the presence here, so that we are addressing this kind of issue of, it's not just New York, but it's broadly the Puerto Rican presence and action. So if you could say something about the July 25th event that you referenced in your first comments, how did that impact or attempted to impact response to the crisis in Puerto Rico? That's my question for you. Reverend Whittaker, when folks started showing up at the Park Street Library, and I know it well, say a word about or two about the concrete kinds of programming, events for the parents, for the kids who are now arriving in Frog Hollow from Puerto Rico, if you would. And Reverend Cruz, you gave us plenty of examples. Could you say a bit more about the Archdiocese of New York in general commitment to doing those kinds of trips, educational fora for the Puerto Rican case, besides what the Bronx effort did, if you would. So please.
Yeah, the July 25th event last year was an event that comprised an effort of clergy and social agencies. Social agencies like the one I work with. Puerto Rican Marcha also was our councilwoman was a part of that organization, and other ministers that were together to do that. The thing was that event, as I said before, was a great event, not well attended. But opened our eyes about other challenges that we facing that you just said and you mentioned. How we collaborate, how we become more effective, especially that second generation that doesn't speak, not only the language, doesn't speak our culture. It's a big difference. How we engage them in what we have experienced as Puerto Ricans from there and now living here. And there's a gap there that needs to be closed at some point. And this event create other meetings, other approximation with other people in the city that now we are developing what we call PA for PR. Okay, and this PA PR, we just sit down discussing. We need to educate our people. We just can stand in a pulpit or at tarimas and shoot them with so-called truth. They don't understand what's going on. Okay, we need to educate our young, are those parents who doesn't know how to deal with their own young people. In my organization, as a director for intervention and program development, we created a program where calling leadership, entrepreneurship, governmentship. Okay? And that program for youth people mostly, just youth people from 14 to 18 years old. What the idea is to educate them, their leadership capacities, okay, what they can bring to their own community as entrepreneurs, that they are, okay, and how to govern that community, because they are the future leaders of that community. That they will be the future senators, the future council people, the future presidents, and so on and so on. And that's what that event of the July 25th bring to us. Now we have a challenge: organize around that and expand to other counties like Allentown, Reading, Lancaster, where we have a big communities concentrated of Puerto Ricans. And that's what we're doing now, thanks to that event that no well attended, but well challenged to us.
Terrific. Thank you.
So, I think that the library it's one of the many examples, but in the library, there's this great group of women that go knit on Tuesdays, and they are there to sort of be a presence. They're there in communities where they find support in a new neighborhood. Also, the library has a group of students from Trinity College, which is a little Ivy college not too far away, that come to do tutoring. But other than the library, our congregation is very active in a school called Grace Academy, and we give scholarships to the girls that graduate, and most of them are Latino girls in the city, that they are being prepared in this very small school with scholarships to be able to go to college in colleges that are maybe Ivy League colleges. And so we're very, very pleased to be part of that. And we also have created a partnership with the New England Farm Workers to assist families who are in need of security deposit, because I don't know, again, I'm not from New York, but in Hartford, one of the biggest obstacles that families face when moving from Puerto Rico or other places is that the security deposit is so unattainable. You can't reach it. Sometimes it's 2 months and a half, 2 months security deposit and 1 month rent. That's $5,000-$6,000, right? I mean, that's a lot of money, and that, then sometimes cost families to stay transient in los sofás de la familia, going, and all of that. And so with the New England Farm Workers, we're able to collaborate to help people and other agencies like Hands on Hartford. And most of those women most of those families are Latino families that are coming into the city. And so there's various ways that we can, we're very blessed to be a very old church that has some resources, but there's various ways that, if we immerse ourselves, for example, I love the library, so I'm very passionate about it, in places like the library where it's the hub of a community, we will learn what the needs are, and then we would have a sort of grassroots response to the community as opposed to a top-down response to the community.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, for the little complicated to answer the question,
Sure.
only insofar as the Archdiocese of New York is 10 counties, Charities, it's almost autonomous, although under the umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
But we reflect the policy or the approach of the leadership. So I know the leadership, Cardinal Dolan, Episcopacy, and all others are supportive of any humanitarian efforts, of supporting any political advocacy and legislative action, state or federal, in the as it concerns Puerto Rico and the United States relationship with it. That's just given, and that's been stated. Now, when it comes to the action of these mission trips, they support it, but our parishes, the churches themselves, have been doing this for a long time. So we have the contacts already there, but the leadership has to say, keep doing the good work, type of thing, so, which is a good thing for us. We don't need too much interference, sometimes, how that goes. And so it's there. As it concerns Puerto Rico, I would be excited, I am excited to be a part of a greater effort, initiative, mission, whatever word you wish to use and however it's manifest. I think one challenge that we have, and if you're Latino, I'm coming after you. If you're Dominicano, if you're Mexican, if you're El Salvador, and we need assistance for Puerto Rico, I'm knocking on your door. We're going to reach out to you. The same way I will point and hopefully guide another cultural Latino nation or history to immigration is the finest example, isn't it now? Everyone is this is Mexican. I go, no, it's not. If you're from an immigrant nation, if you have that history, this is you. You need to step up and advocate for that. So I like to, I don't want to say work both sides of the aisle, but the fact is we're all one. The greatest challenge I ever had as a priest, one of the greatest, is being in a Latino community with people from different countries with their own set of traditions, and there was no commonality. So I would remove all of the images, and until we get together at the one table, then they'll come back. Then we'll come back.
So I think this piece about looking for efforts that unite us instead of divide us is one of Centro's concerns as well. And so part of the dialogue we have to have, we want to have, is what would we want to leave for Centro on their agenda in terms of efforts as religious communities to join them in the larger effort on behalf of Puerto Rico. So thank you for that, Father Cruz. My friends, it is 3:03. I'm a watch guy. And I think we should break around 3:23 to give us 7 minutes to go to the restroom, grab some more water, and get ourselves to the plenary.
All right.
It's a miracle.
So maybe a little bit more, because I gotta organize my notes. Por favor, your suggestions, your questions for the panel. We have 3 terrific clergy colleagues here, and they've shared great ideas. Please, ask questions, push us. So, por favor.
Yeah, I like the idea of the mission to Puerto Rico. I think it's about time. I don't know if anyone's doing one. Is anyone doing a mission? A medical mission to Puerto Rico?
That I know.
There's not
They
an
go to
agency
Dominican
that I'm
Republic,
aware
to El
of.
Salvador, to Guatemala.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico is out of the
Sí.
question.
Sí.
Yeah,
Bueno,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is because we haven't told our stories right. We haven't told the stories of the lack of CAT scans and MRI machines, and in a way that people are compelled to say, this is now necessary in this territory of the United States.
I'm just to go on the side here. I'm a friend with a guy who lives in Virginia, not Puerto Rican, but he's very much tied into going into medical missions in Mexico. Very religious church down there. And he was asking me, and I was like, I was explaining the Puerto Rican situation to me, and this is what he asked me, and it never occurred to me. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Great point.
Picking up in what you said, we have been taught with a wrong pride.
Uh-huh.
We believe we're part of the first world when we are not. Puerto Rico is the third world country, okay, with a dress of the first world. But you find Puerto Rican churches in Philadelphia going down to Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador, and Puerto Rico is out of the list because we have no needs in Puerto Rico. We have everything there, and that's a great problem we have.
Great point. Thank you. Others, please. Por favor.
I'm going to jump here. And first of all, I really commend you for the work that you're doing, which is great. I do see, and I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. I do see a little disconnect between what I can hear you're doing here and how committed you are to social justice. Between this and what's happening in the island with many churches, or at least the ones that are more vocal. They're becoming very politicized, very much.
See.
And that is worrying because we have great people trying to do real work, and then we have other people there pushing a different agenda, an agenda of hatred,
Indeed.
pushing legislation against LGBT, against women, cutting, or trying to remove, rights from workers.
See.
And that's really worrying because it's becoming a real issue where there can't be any dialogue. So how do you address that? I mean, are you aware of it? And how do you, from your perspective, as people who are in the church, and have this mission, how do you address that? I mean, I would like to hear from you.
Yeah.
Quickly, I said this. I worked for the denomination for 25 years straight.
For who?
The denomination,
La
Christian Missionary Alliance.
denominación, ajá.
Alianza Cristiana Misionera.
Ajá.
25 años. I went to the top, for the top people in the denomination. And when I get there, I thought that God sent me there. When I see what's going on there, I say, my God, what I'm doing here? Why you send me here? No, I don't send you here. You get here. Okay? And I asked, please, Lord, take me away from here. And he did. Okay? Me botaron como bolsa, como dicen.
Or she did.
Okay? But we said, yes, you have a great point. the church, and I'm talking about from Protestant perspective, has been an instrument of the system to keep people quiet. Okay? And at the point that I understand that they know what they're doing. Okay? Listen, I travel Peru, Guatemala, Colombia, Buenos Aires, Brazil, Chile, and you find the same pattern from our missionaries. They are not evangelizing people. They are transculturizing people. The message is not the gospel. Is the establishment message, not the gospel message. And when people raise a voice within that kind of denominations, where I were, for example, I was signalized as a non-grad person and not theological sound person. Okay? And I feel so great because, thank God, I don't want to be part of them. I remember when I was confronted and was ready to kill, they said, we're going to baptize you before you kill you. He said, where are you going to go after I get baptized? He said, well, we're going to the heaven. Oh, are you going to the heaven too? Yes, we're going to the heaven. Then I don't want to go to the heaven with you. Okay? And that's what I felt. And that's the reality. We need a new generation of ministers, well-stand, well-informed, not because we are a different ideological people, because if we have a gospel that tells us to be the right line, okay, sometimes you're going to feel you're going to be in the left line, sometimes you're going to be on the right line. But you ask for justice, not for any ideology or a second agenda behind. And that's a great point there. And Puerto Rico is a typical case of that colonization process through the church that has been happening.
So I just want to say that I'm aware of the amounts of money that have been dumped in lobbyists from special interest religious people. Okay? I have people on the ground there that keep me informed, friends and lawyers, who feel that the oppression of the most conservative church that is so anti-LGBTQ, anti-women's rights. Tenemos una procuradora que, I'm just going to be very honest with you, that was a disaster. Like I'm on Twitter asking people, can you take her down? And then she's there for 10 years, and there's so many things. Procuradora de la Mujer who is absolutely a failure to every woman in the island of Puerto Rico. And then we have allowed so I'm a progressive Christian, so I'm going to be very, very careful with my words. But we have allowed the people who believe that justice is not in the gospel to handle the narrative. They have become the spokespeople for the church. Justice and compassion, okay? Sure. And seeing people with dignity and respect as God's children wherever they are, and so one of the things I did today, I wore this is my denomination's emblem of God is still speaking. It has a comma because we believe that there's not a period. Yeah. God is still speaking, so there is a comma. And it has a rainbow comma, right? This is my favorite jewelry from the UCC. I wear it with great pride because I am not an LGBTQIA person, but I'm an ally. And so I wear it to say to the world, I am a woman who's ordained, who believe that we're all God's children. And so it's this sort of, and we don't all have to believe the same thing and stand for the same things, but when we allow one voice to just control the dialogue. And one thing is that we have a stance in our faith of believing certain things or not, and another thing is that we oppress other people that don't believe what we believe. And we have a situation in Puerto Rico that the progressive voice, that the women's voice, that the voice of the worker, the voice of the marginalized is just being muffled and it's being silenced. And it's being silenced, unfortunately, by a lot of people that called el hermano Lugo here a communist, and by the people that call him a communist and call him all these things, these are the people that are really leading the charge. And I, for one, I'm going to be very honest with you. This is something I have agonized with. This is something I have written to the General Minister of the United Church of Christ about. And I feel hopeless. I feel like I don't know how to capture the audience en la isla porque yo estoy aquí y me siento que there's just no way that I can do it from here, and maybe I need to move there. I mean, this is kind of like the stuff that it burns in your heart and you feel so hopeless from over here because not even the leaders of your denomination sometimes have the answer for you. I mean, and seriously, it's the amounts of, I mean, this is people who are advocates on the ground that are, some of my friends, they say, the amount of money that is just that's being dumped on lobbyists to advocate for these interests. And then, cuando matan una mujer en Puerto Rico, where's the outrage? That's my question, because when women are killed in Hartford and people are cut into pieces, como mataron una mujer hace 2 años que la partieron en cantito y la tiraron en un callejón, what do you call that, the drainage, the gutter, right? I mean, en una cuneta, where was the outrage?
Yeah.
There are people that don't even know about that, okay? And I'm like, who's organizing for this? And people are like, well, the church here is, I mean, it is infuriating. And I, for one, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have a plan on how to do this. I hope that we can continue to talk about this and see what answers we can come up with together.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay. There's not a tradition of protest in Puerto Rico, which we have here. One of the recent times I was in Puerto Rico, I happened to be at a time when Eddie Roberto and his, were you there too?
¿Dónde?
La de la deuda. La vigilia. So I happened to be in town, and it was an extremely nice demonstration, very, very nice. And it was very mixed, families, young people, old people, nuns, it was lovely. But on the way there with the Uber, I took an Uber over there, traffic, and he was talking about it. He said, it's a good thing you're going because la gente de la UP can't do Playuela, they can't do Junta Fiscal, they can't do Promesa, they can't do UPR, they can't do La Ceniza, the Incinerador. It's really the same people, like going, and so it was such a nice demonstration, and I thought, well, maybe the church can play a role in normalizing protests in Puerto Rico and making it okay, because protests in Puerto Rico are seen as something that students do, something that lefties do, something that independentistas do. And for instance, I come from Guaynabo, and I'm just appalled that nobody is appalled. They talk about it, but Héctor O'Neill has, there's accusation of sexual harassment that have gone for like decades. And people are saying, yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? And I said, they don't have, and therefore the governor has asked them to leave. And we're like over a month, and this guy's not going anywhere. And so I thought, because Puerto Ricans are respectful of the church, and their church, many are church going. I happen to be church going myself. That maybe the churches can teach Puerto Ricans from all venues, or it is okay to protest as a sign of displeasure and to send a message. I don't know if you can do that in Puerto Rico.
Any one of you want to, they've started that recently.
Yeah.
There is a history, but it's our older history.
With aquella cristiana.
My mother, 90 years old, will tell you about 3 protests that she was a part of.
Yeah.
And that came here to the city to do the same thing. Okay? So there is a historic separation.
Right.
And that's the education that we need to bridge.
Right.
We're not going to have the answers. We do have the way to the solutions. One of the issues if we're talking solely on the leadership level, our people of faith are being led by people who are just self-interested. And that's a challenge also that we have to really take face on. But one hope of the byproduct of mission trips, for example, is showing them what's possible, right? In the education process and in the visiting process and in the healing process, physically and otherwise. Especially engaging those young adults who the college students have been doing sit-outs. Then they closed the University of Puerto Rico just recently because of this. And they may close eventually if they keep cutting public funds for everything. if that continues to be allowed. But sometimes our older folks, estoy cansado, que luchamos toda mi vida. This is where we need to bridge these generations and be there, because otherwise they will suffer alone for a very long time. And this is where I go back to the humanitarian. And if we go to the grassroots and start seeding again and being there with them together.
I, for one, want to be part of that. What is your name? Gretchen. I want to be part of any delegation, interfaith hopefully, and ecumenical, that says we will take on going to Puerto Rico in a commitment by our various denominations, because our denominations have the resources. They like to cry poor, but they're not. And so, various denominations that say our task for the next 3 years is to go to Puerto Rico to educate young and old and how to advocate, community organize, community mobilizing, and also how to lead the charge in protesting the various areas that need to be protested for the worker, for the women, for the oppressed. And we have, some of us, we have gone through trainings on how to organize, and we're community organizers because we've been trained to do that. So it will not cost the denomination additional money to educate us, but they will have to, pay us to go. And I think that is a brilliant idea, that we as leaders say, estamos por acá, nos sentimos hopeless, pero we can go there and see if we can organize and prepare young and older people to be better community organizers and mobilizers, and to protest, to have ethical protest.
You would be better off, not just Puerto people, but the Puerto Rican middle class, who, believe me, is oppressed with this crisis, because those people have the wherewithal and the knowledge to move ahead. But they're the hardest to convince to do this. But they're also the easiest to educate on how you do it. And they are going to be losing, a lot on this crisis. This is no longer people at the bottom. We're like talking, everybody's suffering at some level, so.
We have 2 questions or 3, and I want
That's
to get
great.
them in.
That's
Yes,
great.
so Cito, Jimmy, and then the brother here, Jose. So I think let the 3 of you ask your questions. We'll get responses from our colleagues.
That's a great idea, man.
You had said you were going to have a plenary with Centro, talking about the religious, later on, are you guys going to...
There's a plenary for all the groups to report back, yes.
So the question is, when you discuss, maybe you could talk about the idea of working or expanding the faith community access, or see about, because this discussion is great, but if this is the only group, or if we're, like for example, when I look at the program, I see social, information, music, and all the other, and then faith, one little thing on the side,
Gotcha.
which, and if that's how they're doing it still, because the last time I came was years ago, like 5 years ago, and it was the same thing. I made a presentation here, and I was the only religious presentation in the field, so maybe they need to expand it, because you have Catholic, you have Protestant, and you have Muslim,
Maybe a mini summit that Centro around the religious community.
So
Thank you.
That's one thing. And then quickly, Reverend Cruz, you had talked about the generation gap. I work with Dr. Agosto in NYTS, and I'm a history major. And I focused on Pentecostalism, I'm Pentecostal. And I wanted to know how, not briefly, but just how could we work together with Catholics, because you know the divide between Catholics and Pentecostals, just for the sake of going over to Puerto Rico, helping out, because if you already have an organization, if you already established yourself there, and I am a person who born in New York, but I am a leader within my fellowship, but I'm married to a woman who is super Puerto Rican, that she may call me, I'm in New York, I'm not a real Puerto Rican. So, and she loves mission, so maybe I can, get her involved in working with us, because we don't live too far from where church is. So, maybe
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
We can
So
dialogue,
partnerships.
Yeah.
and it's not going to be just for the sake of Puerto Rico,
Right.
right?
Okay.
It's going to be,
Thank you.
Make
So
something
hold on
happen.
to that
Yeah.
brilliant idea, and we'll work on it. Mr. Jimmy, please.
First, my suggestion is that we have Roberto Martinez here, that if we're gonna do something, in Puerto Rico, any group that has to go to Puerto Rico, he knows all the players there. So this is the guy.
Raise your hand, sir. Raise your hand, please.
Roberto Martinez.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's the president of the Theological Society.
Yes, I'm also the coordinator of the coalition of the
Of the what coalition?
Can't hear you.
Ecumenical.
Ecumenical Coalition.
I thought you knew each other, he knows where all the bodies are.
Yes.
He ain't the only one.
That is everything that you are saying,
Yeah.
but the reality is quite different.
We should talk more.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sí, por favor.
Follow up.
¿Todo el mundo habla español aquí?
por supuesto.
Porque él habla español mejor que inglés, como yo. Así que, so that's one thing. The second is, there's no outrages sometimes because the people that are leading the charge in most of the feminist movement are white people that have no relationship with the community most of the time. It happened during the Women's March here, that all the women of color were saying, we're not part of the leadership of these marches because they're not included. In Orlando, there's a bunch of white women that are in charge of everything, and you have, every once in a while you see a brown person here, a brown person there. And that includes sometimes the fight in the progressive left, that is basically, progressive whites with money that understand a lot. And sometimes you don't get outraged. Let me tell you a story. So,
We're
if you go
running
to,
up on
I know,
time.
if you go to Barrio Obrero and you go to school, there's no electricity in the bathroom, there's water in the floor, not because of the crisis. For the last 25 years, they have been living that. So sometimes when you see that, why the people are not protesting? Because they have been subject to this kind of treatment for many, many years. So sometimes for them it's like difficult to understand that they're facing a crisis. It is a crisis that is coming. When the checks start bouncing, that's where you're gonna see a lot of outrages in Puerto Rico. But my suggestion, and I'm working in Kissimmee, is like, I think the church needs to create like a glossary of words, instructions in how the community talk to the church, to get them involved in, because sometimes when you go and talk to them in a way, they're like, I don't want to be involved in that. That's my experience. Sometimes it's common sense.
I haven't seen that problem.
Yeah. That hasn't been our experience, so we
Because
need to
you're
talk
from
more.
You're here. The problem is
Yeah.
that
We
out-
have to deal
out
with the
there.
community that's in front of us
That's,
first.
yeah.
And sometimes my people don't have a check to eat tomorrow. So we're not thinking about Puerto Rico. So that's the reality where we are, and we bring Puerto Rico in and empower them
No, I
to educate them.
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but in order for us, national level, the East Coast,
Yeah.
from Florida all the way to Maine. So there's different type of churches, different type
Oh,
of
absolutely,
denominations. And sometimes we need to learn how to engage with each other.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Eso es muy triste,
Thanks,
¿verdad?
Ryan.
That's
And
very
last
sad.
question, then we have to break.
Thank you for
I'm sorry.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
I really
Very
like
sad.
your last statement because we have to develop here sort of first or simultaneously. My question is that, or my recommendation, there are a lot of meetings going on here and very radical meetings, but more and more I see the need for overlapping with other areas. The church, I'm sure, is interested in environment, in
Yes.
education, in other areas. I'm seeing that the format here, and I think some people maybe have alluded to that, does not provide an opportunity for that conversation, and it's
Overlap.
clear, so we can address. For instance, I wanted to ask you two things. In Puerto Rico, I just heard, and I hope I didn't hear right, in the radio, an announcement that the church was able to be successful in getting legislation to get schools to be religious schools free of governmental interference. It sounded to me, I don't know if it was presented right, that the madrasas, that the are going on in other countries. Okay, it's only almost to, and Reverend, I don't know if you heard that, but that's what I heard. They were congratulating themselves because now we're not gonna be subject
Right.
del Colegio Consejo de Educación y de Puerto Rico, we're going to create our own rules.
Right.
I don't know what that means. And in the context that you mentioned, that church is colonizing people in Latin America, what is it that we're going to be preparing in Puerto Rico?
And your second point.
That's what I heard.
All right.
Maybe I heard wrong, but I think you don't want to look into that. And my last point is, interestingly, in Puerto Rico, the church has been able to use technology very effectively to make that colonization to Latin America. Very effectively. I mean, we go back 15, 20 years, they've been using satellite technology connecting to Latin America, okay? And I don't know if I haven't seen in the US, in the church, the use of technology in that fashion. And my question to you guys, those that are here, have you looked into the use of technology as a means to organize? I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions.
Oh, sure.
But in Puerto Rico, I see 2 or 3 groups that have networks in Latin America. Have you, in the United States, discussed or considered doing something similar now that the entry to utilizing new technology is so easy?
Thank you. We got it. So we have time for each of you to pick up on any comment that our audience has shared and make your closing statement all in 1 minute, each of you. Sorry, that's the way it is. Roberto.
Well, I'm going to recall uno de los padres de la iglesia, San Agustín. Escribió Las Confesiones. Uno de los libros más importantes que debe leer todo el mundo. Un libro así de grande, pero léelo en pedazos.
You could download it on Kindle, I have it.
Yeah. Yes. Él menciona una cosa allí, lo voy a decir en español porque es el idioma del cielo, se entiende mejor en español. Lo siguiente, ¿bien? Si no te indignas, no logras nada. Por tanto, él se indignaba con su propia indignación, lo que lo hacía levantarse a tomar conciencia de su condición presente para transformar lo que venía después. Puerto Rico no se indigna, los puertorriqueños nos indignamos. Hace 100 y pico años atrás, uno de nuestros próceres, Roberto, se dijo, no queremos colonia ni con España ni con Estados Unidos. ¿Qué hacen los puertorriqueños que no se indignan? ¿Bien? La indignación es compasión, la indignación es justicia. Pues ante esa mujer que mataron en Puerto Rico, me recuerdo el caso, nadie se indignó. El caso de O'Neill en Guaynabo, nadie se indigna. Entonces, tenemos que la gente entienda por qué tiene que indignarte. No es conformarte, es indignarte y levantarte. No tenemos que vivir así. No nacimos para esto. Dios no quiere esto para nosotros. Esa es la indignación. Cuando llegamos allí, entonces habrá esta conversación.
Thank you.
So I want to say that I live on social media, and social media is my house. So that is where I organize. I have done 24-hour vigils after Ferguson, after Orlando, and I got them done in 24 hours because social media is where I live. So
Besides
that
your nice house in suburban Connecticut. Okay.
con 4 gallinitas que tenemos allá en el patio.
Member of her parish? Is that
Pero yo también quiero decir que me entristece escucharlo usted pedirnos a nosotros un glosario so that you can communicate with the church. And that is no, not just you, because we have the responsibility to speak your language.
That's right.
Not you ours. We have the responsibility, right? Nelson Mandela, ¿qué decía? If you speak a language they can understand, you can reach their head. But if you speak their language, you can reach their heart. And so that is the motto of my ministry. I'm always in a room trying to understand what people's language is and say the right words so that I can then capture them. Es una vergüenza como personas de fe que nosotros estamos aquí y alguien nos pregunta, give us a glossary so that we can speak to you. Now, thank you for that challenge. We have work to do.
And Father Cruz.
Yes to technology, because in New York State, we use it to contact our elected officials or to advocate or to vote against. Again, part of the challenge is generational. Our young adults and our younger leaders can. Our older adults don't want to know about Facebook or cell phones.
Yeah. Eso es un problema.
Yeah.
So that speaks to a point we spoke about earlier about the investment in Puerto Rico in technology, educating and employing the people there in these type of industries, instead of going back to factory, all of this manufacturing or retail. But, you know, I was an educator for many years, still am, just dressed differently. And it's always concerning to me, people, well, there is no generational difference in education. There sure is.
Yeah.
When your parents cannot help their kids with their homework, there's a problem in education that we have to bridge. That's fundamental. That's fundamental. And we just have to ramp it up, still address that, and bring it to this venue and this forum.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful dialogue. I've learned a lot. I hope you have. If you don't hear everything that we said downstairs in my report back, please forgive me. I'll do the best I can. Please give our panelists a wonderful